My name is Hank Meals. This is a survey, a loosely defined survey of petroglyphs from the Feather, Yuba, Bear, and North Fork of the American River. I worked as an archaeologist for the Forest Service and as a consultant for maybe 25 years, and I'm still an avid hiker, and I love to go to petroglyph sites, and I'm continually learning more about them, but I don't feel like I know very much. So let's get started. The interesting thing about this one is its busyness and the fact that it has so many petroglyphs that keep occurring in different sites. This style is unique. It's called abstract representational, or style 7, for what it's worth. And the amazing thing is it's very regional. It extends from, say, the South Fork of the Feather to down to the Middle Fork of the American, and it is almost all of them are above 6,000 feet. They're considered to be made by people who predated the indigenous people who are still here, the Nisenan, Mountain Maidu, Concow, and Washoe, whose territory this is in, possibly Paiute. And these, even though these are abstract to us, because we don't have the key, we don't have the language, we don't have the orientation or culture, this one keeps turning up. This one keeps turning up. One of very few. This is a bear paw. One of very few that's representational, that you can, otherwise they're all pretty abstract. There's lots of would look like random lines. Here you are looking at, you take your notes, you come back with this, and that's not very satisfying. But now, this whole thing of symbols having meaning that we're not tuned into, these are two symbols that turn up all the time in our culture, and we know what they mean because we've agreed upon that. Just saying, I'm sure that some of those ones we're looking at and we're calling abstract are not abstract at all, but have meaning. Here's another version. This is an arboglyph carving on an aspen tree that's done by, we know this guy. It's interesting that he too is using a bear paw. These are done by Basque shepherds, and only in their time here in the U.S. It's not something they did back in Spain or France, in the Pyrenees. It's something that evolved here while they were tending sheep, and it lasted maybe, it's no longer happening. I mean, it's happening, but it's sort of self-conscious now. At the time, I think it was done as art. That's a whole story unto itself. I have plenty of stuff, but that's another story. Here's some others. Recently we were visited by some Tibetan monks, and they did this sand mandala, and it was up for a few days, and then they swept it away. And down on the lower right are some hieroglyphics from the PG&E. They too have meaning, and I don't know what they are either. Here's something you don't see a lot of, but like superimposition, putting pictographs on top of each other. These are pictographs, not pictographs. Here we go. And then some things are just mystic. Maybe California, maybe not. On the right is the inside of an old powder magazine at the Empire Mine in Grass Valley, and somebody spray painted this diabolical creature in there, and then the holes that are punched into the back give it even more meaning. I mean, you could read what you want into any of these and probably be wrong. Now here's a symbol that we all relate to, respond to it right away. You don't dare park in those places. Simple, just simple lines, but great meaning. Your car could get towed away. And then art, the whole idea of calling the petroglyphs rock art doesn't sit well with me, because that again is an assumption. Was there even a separate category for art? It's just making an assumption that narrows your perception of what it is. Be skeptical about using narrow characterizations to study people who might have seen the world with less specialization. It's problematic to use categories like art, spirituality, astronomy, and even natural history when you attempt to apply these concepts to other cultures. True. Here are just the watersheds. South Yuba, Middle Yuba, Bear. Now here's what I was talking about. This is the distribution of Style 7 petroglyph sites. You can see Tahoe as a landmark, and you can see the rivers. Well, you get an idea, and it's very close to Washoe territory today. And this is Washoe territory. Let's look at that. Oh. Yeah, it's pretty similar. And then map making, to assume that people would look at the earth. A lot of people feel that the petroglyphs, they'll say, well, it's obvious, they're maps. Okay. To assume that people would look at the earth only from a vantage point that's above and looking straight down doesn't consider the humanity of living on the landscape. Saying that there's a pond, there are cattails, there are turtles in that water, that's a different view that expands the human experience of a place. This is a Zuni guy. Most maps don't have memory. For me, the whole landscape around here is home. Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of these petroglyph sites are at a high elevation, and many of them have a very good view, and from many of them you can see another location. So if you think of people at these locations, say at night, starting fires? Is there some messaging? Is there some ceremony? What is that? I know myself, when I'm out and the sun's going down, and the ridge tops that you've been looking at all day and could barely see because they're kind of flattened are all starting to shape up. The light being side lighting, you can see all the drainages, you could see all the major creeks, and at the same time the stars are coming out. And so you have all this extra material to navigate by that I don't know of existing on any one map now. I'm just saying there's a lot to explore in this notion of maps beyond what we have. And for instance, when I first went to work for the Forest Service, 1975, you get a compass and the topo maps. Takes you a while to figure it out, but after a while, this is nothing but contour lines, and you can see this instantly in 3D once you get accustomed to using it. Otherwise, it's two-dimensional, flat, makes you dizzy. Then there's other kinds of rock work, so to speak. Here's something, a duck, trail marker. It's same thing as I talked about, well, I'll leave that go because it was another show. Here's an example of rock work done by nature itself. Who knows? This is an erratic. These are rocks that have been left behind after the glaciations have melted. So they've been transported by ice and snow. Who knows what the indigenous explanation for this would be? But how can you not respond? That's bigger than the Volkswagen. And then here's just a luscious view from Mount Lola looking towards Sierra Buttes. And what about those landmarks, places? That's a good example. I've looked at the Sierra Buttes from all different angles. You can see it, you see the Sierra Buttes from down at Black Swan, down near Smartsville. And then you could see it from Nevada. You can see it from far north. It's just amazing. What role did landmarks, natural landmarks, have in this? Now, and when it comes to dating petroglyph sites, all you have to go by are remnants of artifacts that are nearby at the same site often that have been radiocarbon dated or other techniques of dating that has to do with science, and then you can assume that maybe they were made by these people, but there's no guarantee of that either, really. Here's Bill Trake, head of the Friends of Sierra Rock Art, who they're out hunting petroglyphs in a non-destructive style. When we reconstruct and imagine hunter and gatherer rock art activities, let us beware of our own cultural biases and projections and question those imaginings in which there are no women in positions of power. Something to think about. Let us also acknowledge that there are cognitive and perceptive states and expressions that Euro-American trained minds may not be able to comprehend. Withhold judgment. Here are the sites themselves. This one is up Sunnyside Meadows. It's about 6,800 feet, pretty close to the Pacific Crest Trail, and it's sort of mid-slope, as you can see. This is the setting. And at the site, you can see milling stones and bedrock mortars. I also want to apologize for the quality of a lot of these, because some of them were taken with Kodachrome way back 30, 40 years ago. Some of them have faded. And the other thing that's an ongoing problem is most of these sites are pretty remote. You get there at midday, the light is as flat as can be at midday, so you're not getting your best shots. I recommend spending the night at a place you really like. Here's another. This shows how these are made. These aren't scraped in, they're pecked in. There'll be some others that show you the same thing. And then here's a question. Nobody I know of has ever found a tool that may be the proper tool for doing the pecking itself. Just haven't found that. Well, these are as old as, these are considered to be from 4,000 to about 1,500 years ago. Here's another one, same area, pecking again. This is Spencer Lakes, not far from the other, but very impressive. You see a date over there of 1851. There was the Meadow Lake Stampede in 1850, which was a mini rush up to the Gold Lake area. And in that winter, this is May of 51, so it would have been 50-51, the winter of that, there was very little snow, unlike the next winter, which was plenty of snow. But that's a possibility. Here's another site that, even though it's incidental to, it's not a petroglyph site, it's in the same area and would have made this area of Gold Valley up above the Downey River area, would have made it really popular because it's a basalt quarry. What they were doing at the basalt quarries is mining in a very rough style, a special kind of basalt, a basalt that's very finely grained. I mean, the ideal material for developing a tool with a cutting edge is something, is cryptocrystalline silicates, which are like obsidian, very fine, more glass-like. They would be ideal. Basalt is crude, chunky, grainy, but what they did, you could see that one on the right, that's a biface. These were of such quality that this could be a trade material itself. So one of the suppositions about this site is they were actually manufacturing these bifaces for trade. Stone Age culture, but again, connoisseurs of stone. These are basalt quarries, and you could see Oakland Pond up in the top center there. And then again, we're looking at the Holly Lake site. You can see the blue-gray rock outcropping. Here's another look at the color. That's pretty close to the actual color of it, and it really stands out. You could see bedrock mortars at it, and you're looking across. On the other side is where the basalt quarry is. But look at this. The superimposition, they haven't been able to count the number of glyphs on here. This is a unique site in the sense that even though there's plenty of the abstract representational glyph in there, there's about 25% are identifiable, representative, like the deer tracks and the bear paws. Here's another shot of it. And this circle in here is only visible in certain light. Otherwise, you can't see it. You're looking just at the glyphs themselves. And for a long time I thought, I wonder what that is. Is that ceremonial? And then I found this picture from the 1930s up there. And you could see that somebody's enhanced that or even created it. People think you're doing the site a favor by enhancing it, which doesn't help at all. So this makes me suspect that this could have been an add-on afterwards. It was fortuitous to find something like this. Here's another technique at the same place, the blue-gray rock, but it gets a patina over it. They come in different colors, and you just peck through enough to get the contrast. Again, abstract representational, although that one's hinting at maybe a leaf. There's some animal tracks over here on the left. I think they're animal tracks. They may be something else. And then the graph may have something to do with netting. Maybe not. It's just the mind jumping, trying to fill in. But hold your assumptions. Look at this. It's phenomenal. I haven't seen one. I have no idea what it is. But, this we do know, and it's a bighorn sheep that used to be in that area, but were wiped out pretty quickly by hunters with guns because their way of getting away from people with atlatls or bow and arrows is to just get out of range, get up high. It doesn't work with guns. But we do have this snapshot of an era when they were there. This is at Lakes Basin, the campground. It's in the Middle Fork of the Feather River, and that you can barely see in the center of it some glyphs, but this is what they look like in bright sunlight. You can just barely tell. Centuries of snow melting off and just abrading that down takes the relief out of it. Here's much closer. You could see it's really obvious that they're pecked. Abstract again. Still more. This is near, what's the big lake there? Long Lake and Mount Elwell. It's at the base of that. Still more. Now this is below Gold Lake on Fraser Creek on its way to the Middle Fork of the Feather. There you can see the pecking really clearly. Concentric circles, another common one. Who knows? Still more. Here's one we're calling a sun disk, and it occurs in lots of places, but it might not be. More concentric circles. Now, this one you could see over on the right, on the rim of that rock, there's something that looks like a counting phenomenon, a repetitive notch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 notches in there. And then on the flat surface below it, if you look carefully, you can see triangles, mountain range type glyph in there. Again, the time of day you get here makes it difficult to really get a good shot. But this is pretty complex and a little unusual with what does that figure into trade, the idea of counting, time, pecking, real obvious. This is Donner Pass. This looks like a copy of a copy. It's a very poor quality. Here's over there in the upper left-hand corner is where the snow sheds begin, off of Highway 40 at Donner. Here's a Meadow Lake area. And this particular kind of touching crude circles is real characteristic of this Meadow Lake site, which has hundreds of glyphs there. Have no idea. But here you get that, as I was talking before, this I'm calling it counting. I could be misleading by saying that, but the repetitive recognition, it's both in that triangular side on the left and these just hash marks here. I have no idea. It's intriguing. Again, I mean, some of them, if you go to them often enough, you can just look at it, something like this, and you could say, Meadow Lake, because there's a characteristic style, and others are like many others. Here's the Byers Lake Trail. And I had an interesting thought. We spent the night here, and as this rock in the foreground is loaded with petroglyphs, and the background is Red Mountain, which many of you have seen. It's across from Cisco Grove, and it is reddish. But if you spend the night here, there's a period of time where the sun goes beyond the horizon, below the horizon, and it lights up Red Mountain, so it is indeed red. It's really a rusty red and super dramatic. And it occurred to me, wow, I can just see some guy with a theatrical sense knowing about that and timing his presentation in front of the petroglyphs as the sun hits this and creating magic, or whatever you want to call it. Here's the rock, and then the relationship with, there are all these intrusions in this. I'm sure that's not the proper geologic term, but there's a better shot of it. And they seem to relish it. It's to participate in it somehow. The same thing is true with the Grouse Ridge petroglyphs. They both have that characteristic of working with it. So it has, whatever it is, it has some meaning. We're still at Byers Lake. Now this is a single rock between Byers Lake and Grouse Ridge, and it's like a boulder. It's a boulder, it's bigger than a car, and you get up on top of it, and there's this one glyph, and we searched all around, all the other, not one glyph, one panel, with these designs. You could see the scale. There's my hiking pole, but it's almost impossible to find, and without GPS you could probably never find it again. It was found by a friend of mine who was a surveyor and just happened to be following a straight line that you have to follow no matter what terrain it goes over, and up on top was this display. Here's the Grouse Ridge area, which tremendous view is a big aspect of this. Here's again those intrusions in the rock that I talk about and how they just work within it. There you go. Hundreds of glyphs here as well. Here's Bear Valley. Bear Valley, this is a nice shot because you can see it's one of the last valleys with oaks, and before you go into the glaciated region where everything really changes. So you're going to have a riparian vegetation and the things that you're used to from down lower. It's a great transition zone. Beautiful area. This also Bear Valley, and these meadows would have been managed in the sense that areas where two ecosystems come together, like a meadow and a forest, are called ecotone. And at ecotone, you get an amplification of diversity. You get more kinds of plants and more kinds of animals eating those plants. So it's, by its very nature, and it's kind of sophisticated, to create that kind of environment on purpose for more volume is a great idea. It's Bear Valley too. The petroglyphs are right under the power poles. I suspect that petroglyphs have more power than those poles when all said and done. Here's a sun disk. You could see there's a penny for scale. Bear Valley. Bear Paw. And in Bear Valley also bedrock mortars. And these are considered a petroglyph. And what they are is, they're like dimples, like small, size of a golf ball. It would be a large one, and smaller ones, but all over the rock put in there, and they're considered in the ethnographic period. The Pomo did something like this that had to do with fertility ceremonies, but that's just a suggestion, because they did it, they live in a different place, they're a different culture, but it's just a possibility. Now here's, way down here, this is off the South Yuba. This is pretty close by. This is about 2,000 feet. And there are these two rocks together. And again, it's one of those situations between a couple of giant manzanitas. You can't seem to get the picture that you feel when you're there. These two rocks, when you're standing there, feel totally complementary, like they belong together. Is that just my imagination? Could it have been their imagination too? And up on top of the rounded rock are these petroglyphs again. Now there were so many up here, I think it came out to about 90 of them, that I couldn't count them, so I had to use jelly beans to indicate the individual ones, which works. And it enabled me to count them, because if you don't bring home some numbers, you're not doing archaeology. Now we're back up. This is Spalding over there, and imagine this without the dam, just a valley. It's right alongside of Bear Valley. You're only, half a mile from Bear Valley here, but the glaciation begins. It's an entirely different kind of environment. And here's one of the petroglyphs from there. It's a place called Spalding Point. And here's another. And here's what's really startling, just like we got a message from the past with the mountain goat. This guy, this stick figure, which you seldom see, appears to be using an atlatl. Here's what an atlatl is. This preceded the bow and arrow, and the atlatl is the throwing stick. And the arrow and feather point, that's considered a dart, and you can see its compound. You make the front piece separate and insert it, because so you won't lose. If an animal runs off with the arrow embedded in them, or it goes over the edge or breaks or whatever, you just replace that one part rather than having to create a whole dart. Anyway, these were used with great effect up to about 1,300 years ago, when the bow and arrow came around this area. To use these, you hunted in a group, and what this enables you to do is throw with much greater velocity. You think of a baseball pitcher with an extra 2 feet on his arm. You're just getting a lot more power. So hunting in groups with these was really effective. And all you find points of a certain weight that are obviously dart points, and sometimes you find that weight, that atlatl weight, that gives it balance for the thrower. It's a custom kind of thing. Every year in New Mexico, there's a big atlatl festival that I hope to go to sometime, where all kinds of archaeologists are there with their high-tech atlatls and et cetera. It sounds like it would be fun. Here's Rattlesnake Creek up near Cisco Grove. And the petroglyphs are very faint here. But again, you see that style that's so common at Meadow Lake. And this looks like a plant, and the only other place I've seen one like this is way back where we began in Spencer Lake, with something that looked like a plant. Here's the one near Castle Peaks. You can see in the foreground right there a bedrock mortar. You start to get these wheels as you head south now. You begin to see more and more of these wheels. Or shields, some people call them shields, but these are just things, you don't take them literally. Here's Crystal Lake. This is on private property, and somebody told me that this area has been, the owners have destroyed it to put something else up there. But very nice, bear paw, sun disk. Now this one's right alongside of Highway 80. At least 2 sites were destroyed in the making of Highway 80 for the Olympics in the 60s. Here's a photo of one of them. And one of the sites is in between the westbound and eastbound lanes of 80, well, 2 sites. So you have to imagine that as being, that's the South Yuba in there. And here you can see again the highway. Here's another stick figure. But you see how seldom you see anything that you can recognize in the natural world. Pecked, they're routinely pecked. There's a common motif, this chain-like design. Now this is up on a piece of private property on the upper reaches of the North Fork of the American called the Cedars. It's near Soda Springs, but it's they have full-time security there. These are people that have, some of them are descendants of the railroad monopoly people, so you won't get to visit this place. But this is a very impressive area. There's Kerry Smith, the head archaeologist for Tahoe National Forest. Here's in one of the earliest Friends of Sierra Rock Art field trips we did. There's a guy named Will Gortner, the guy with the gray hair. He retired, he was a member of that community, the Cedars, and he was a fanatic about petroglyphs, and he had very strong ideas about them being maps. You can see Bill Drake there. This is hard to see, but that it's very busy. Now this rattlesnake is certainly pretty graphic. That's about 6 feet long. Now here's another phenomenon. You see these inclusions that I guess they were metamorphic rock or were more liquid at one time, and they picked up what we're calling intrusions now. And in this case, they've outlined it. In some cases, they've put horizontal lines through it, but at any rate, there's some highlighting of it. Here I can tell you what Will's saying. He's saying from over here you can see over there. He has his arms out. Yeah, this is That's North Fork of the American down on the other side. Now this design in the foreground, pretty unusual. You can't tell what it is. You know, if you think in terms of maps, it's kind of interesting because even though we're used to trails with lots of switchbacks, most Indian trails don't have switchbacks. They're just pretty much straight up and down. There are obviously places you have to yield to the topography no matter what. But so with that in mind, look at this. This is a pendant found at a site about 2,000 feet on the San Juan Ridge, but it's so similar. Could be just my imagination. Now, this one is, talk about settings. This is absolutely magnificent. This is on the Forest Hill Divide, and it's called Wabena Point, and that's the North Fork of the American down below. And on the other side is, what's that ski resort over there, the cross-country ski resort? Can't think of the name of it. Royal Gorge. This is Royal Gorge. Here's Will Gortner and Arlo Acton, a phenomenal artist, and Bill Drake, as he's head of Friends of Sierra Rock Art. Looking from Wabena Point out across, that's Snow Point. That is steep and awe-inspiring. Now, what was happening here, there's a very narrow section of the ridge. It's like a needle ridge that heads out, and it's eroding on both sides. And the panels had busted up and were starting to fall down into oblivion off of these cliffs. So, as in an attempt to try to save what's there, they wrestled around with this idea and finally agreed on hiring a stonemason to cement the pieces together that you could see belonged in a certain place. I'm not so sure how I feel about it, because in a way everything comes to an end. But this one has quite a few of what some people are calling shields. It's like circular with the designs within it. Here's one. Now, here's an archaeologist, his name is John Betts, who does drawings, beautiful drawings of, this is the same site imagined without the mortar in it. And here's Arlo giving it the once over. Arlo always had opinions, sometimes really rocked some of those guys in tweed jackets, because his opinions were pretty out there, but useful. The mind needs stretching. Again, the continuity of culture, we're still here.